I'm Sari.
And I'm Haley.
And this is Seamwork Radio. Welcome back to Seamwork Radio, where we share practical ideas for building a creative process so you can sew with intention and joy. Today, we're talking about how to evolve your handmade wardrobe as your style changes throughout the years. We'll cover strategies for navigating style transitions with confidence, exercises to help you understand what's changing and what's staying the same, and how to approach updating your sewing in a thoughtful way that honors both who you were and who you're becoming. All right, so Haley, our icebreaker for today. Tell me about a time when you looked back at something you made a few years ago and thought, what was I thinking? So what had changed about your style or your life that made that piece feel so different to you?
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
The one that comes to mind, it wasn't a few years ago. It was about a year ago. It was for, I just come back from maternity leave and we had Stitch Fest, which is like our annual in-person event. And everyone who works here is always like excited, like, what are you sewing for Stitch Fest? We almost always end up making something special for it. And I made a Victory Patterns pattern. I think it's called the Sophia. And it's really cute. I like it. Mm-hmm. It has a sheared bodice and then kind of like a puff sleeve and like an A-line skirt. And I made it out of a block print fabric from Blackbird. Super cute.
Yeah, it was super cute.
I went to try it on. I finished it, of course, like I think I ended up finishing it like literally hours before, but the day before it was finished enough for me to try it on. And I didn't make a muslin because it was had a sheared bodice. So I was like, it's fine. It's great. I tried on and I'm like, oh crap, I need a strapless bra with this. And I was nursing and I put on my strapless bra and it was like suffocating me. I ended up having to like Amazon Prime a strapless bra to my take a gamble on one.
Yeah.
And it was just, I liked the dress, but it was just like so impractical. Mm-hmm. I made it because I thought, oh, it's a special occasion dress that or semi-special occasion that's comfortable because the elastic, it's in cotton. It's going to be like a great thing that I reach for these kind of like semi-special occasion things that's really comfortable. And it defeated the purpose for me. I'm like, this is... and so now I've had many opportunities to wear it over the last year and I haven't reached for it again just because it's just not practical, but I'm chasing after a toddler at a baby shower. I can't have I can't fall out of a strapless bra. I bend over far too much in my life. So that's it it caused me to reflect on kind of the requirements of my wardrobe in this particular season of my life and to get kind of realistic about it, which ended up being a really valuable lesson that I've been able to implement in the time since. But
yeah, there are no failures. There's always a lesson somewhere.
Yeah, totally. So that was the one that comes to mind. What about you?
Well, just in your story, I was just thinking about how recently I've been thinking about strapless bras because I do like to wear strappy things quite a lot. Mm-hmm. And I've decided that anytime I sew something with spaghetti straps in the future, I'm going to put in a shelf bra from here on out because I hate strapless bras so much. I have one that's pretty good, but I wore it for some YouTube videos recently and I was watching the footage and I was like, I can see that my breasts are falling further and further down the longer this video goes on. It's just no strapless bra is going to keep me where I want to be for hours at a time.
Yeah. And I feel like it's kind of a time limit on it. How long will I tolerate it for?
And then you just are yanking it up all the time and it's not comfy. Maybe there's some strapless out there that actually works, but I haven't found it yet. But I was thinking about this also. This isn't related to something I've made, but I was thinking about pajamas because I have I have a couple pairs of favorite pajamas. One of them I wear all the time, and I have like coffee stains on them, and they're super soft and comfortable at this point. I just absolutely love them. I wear them constantly. And then I have this other pair that I really, really like, but they're like a crisp white cotton. Beautiful. It feels like wearing hotel sheets. I love them. I never wear them because they're not practical for my life. I live somewhere very muddy. First thing in the morning and last thing at night, I take the dogs out for their pee break, and it's usually dirty outside. I usually get dirt on myself, and there's no time where I can wear them and not feel like I'm going to get them dirty. So I just never wear them. And I was just thinking about that this morning, actually, and how even if you really like something, even if it really feels like your style, just those constraints of your life are going to be another thing you have to consider, whether you're buying something or you're making it. So yeah, that's a lesson that I've learned in various contexts too. But I think as far as thinking about like what was I thinking when I made this, so there's lots of examples from the far past that I could go into just because my style has changed so much. But a more recent one, I mean, I wouldn't say it's like a what was I thinking moment, but one of my summer projects was the Carrie romper, which I really like. I think it's really, really cute. I made it in white linen, which I like. I love linen. I love wearing white in summer. But once I finished it, I realized that it's really not my style. I think I chose it because I thought it'd be really, really comfortable, and it is really comfortable. But after I made it, I realized this isn't really me, and I think partially that's because my style is evolving, maybe becoming a little bit more specific. I'm just like more attuned to the specific things that I like a little bit more than I have been in the past. But also, I just am more aware of what I feel really good in and what I feel really comfortable in. And this is the kind of thing where I think it would look great on somebody else. I think it would be fabulous on somebody else. It's just not right for me. So I think that's another thing I've been thinking about a little bit more with what I make and what I choose to make in the future.
Yeah.
So if you have a question for us for a future icebreaker, you can leave it for us in a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and we'll answer it in a future episode. Or you can leave it in the Steamwork community. We have a thread there where you can leave your icebreaker questions for us. You can just search for icebreaker there. All right, so let's get into our topic for today. We've talked about it a little bit already, but I've been thinking a lot lately about how our style evolves as we move through different phases of life. So, there's lots of examples. Maybe you've become a parent and you suddenly realize you need clothes that are more practical for chasing toddlers around. Maybe you've retired and you want to express a more creative side of yourself that was tucked away during your career years. Or sometimes it's subtler. Maybe you've simply noticed that the colors you used to love don't feel quite right anymore. You don't love them as much as you used to. And what I find so beautiful about sewing is that it gives us this unique opportunity to really think deeply about who we are and how we want to show up in the world. When you're investing time and energy into making something by hand, you naturally become more intentional about whether it really fits your lifestyle and your personality. But I'll be honest, style evolution can also feel really overwhelming sometimes. I remember a few years ago, after I moved out of the city and into the country, I definitely felt this way because I've lived in big cities for most of my life, like LA and New York and San Francisco. And then looking at my closet and feeling like nothing quite represented who I was becoming or what my day-to-day life was like was kind of disorienting. And I think it's one thing to buy a few new pieces and test the waters out when your style is evolving, but when you're a sewist, there's this pressure to have it all figured out before you cut into that beautiful fabric, if you know what I mean. So, Haley, have you gone through periods where your style felt like it was shifting, and then how did that affect your sewing?
Yeah, I think definitely. I've been sewing since I was 17, so that's a lot of eras of Haley that sewing has seen me through. I think that whenever my life has experienced a big shift, whether that was graduating from college and beginning to my career. When I moved from Los Angeles to Portland was another big shift. When I became a parent, was another really big shift. And then I thought when I had my second kid that okay, I've I'm a parent. This won't change things very much, but um in addition to these practical shifts, there's also shifts in your identity, and the way you feel about yourself and the way you relate to yourself and how you want to communicate that with the world. Um so I've been through so many of them, but now I think I used to look at it as uh more of these chapters that had defined starts and ends, and now I think of it as more of this perpetual evolution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how I feel too. I do feel like there are moments where you notice the shift
Sure. Yeah.
more acutely, but for me, I do feel like it's a gradual evolution that incorporates things from the past
Mm-hmm.
with whatever is happening in the present. I feel like it's sort of an evolving story.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah. And I think it's in the noticing too, where before I don't think I kind of just sewed what I wanted to and wore what I wanted to in the moment. I didn't think about how it all came together and what it all said as deeply as I do now. So I think that it's probably always been an evolution.
Yeah.
With defining moments. I'm just noticing it as that now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting to kind of watch, and um I think when you sew you just feel a little bit more aware of your choices over the years, looking
Mm-hmm.
back, and what you chose to spend your time making and why, as opposed to shopping and buying clothes, which I think some people do think very intentionally about that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel like sewing kind of forces you to think a little bit more intentionally about it, and maybe have a little bit more self-reflection on how things change over time too.
Yeah. We have been talking about the kind of subtle, gradual changes and then these sudden aha moments. What do you feel what was a recent aha moment that you had with your style?
I think with the carry romper that I mentioned a few minutes ago, that was kind of an aha moment for me. And it was not just about that particular style, that particular pattern, but what it made me realize is that I really feel best in clothing that doesn't overwhelm me,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't have, even though I love lots of volume and I love how it looks on other people, um, there's a certain amount of volume that I feel good in. And that typically, things that are just really voluminous around my waist, for example, or that you know don't show my body shape at all, feel kind of, I don't know, it just feels overwhelming to me. I get overwhelmed in fabric.
Mm-hmm.
um and that's something that has been more recent revelation, because I really like that look. I love maxi dresses and
Uh-huh.
lots of volume, and I think it looks really, really pretty, but I'm just realizing that it maybe is not working for me anymore. So
Yeah.
that's been kind of interesting to think about, and how it's definitely been influencing my choices and what I'm planning to sew in the near future, and noticing what I feel good in.
Yeah.
What about you?
Um, I think I had a recent aha moment with um I was organizing my closet and pulling out the things that I don't wear as much and the things that and making kind of a selection, like a capsule of the things that I wear the most, because I wanted to visualize my core pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wanted to think about in seeing them all together, what was missing. And I felt um I had defaulted too hard into basics. And that there were a handful of like pieces that were like interesting and like a little bit more playful. And I was wanting to style them with everything because I needed more of that in my wardrobe. So that was like a big aha moment was I think I had like this pendulum had swung too far in one direction where for a long time I had made lots of like one-off kinds of things that didn't really, it was just like all dopamine sewing, which I love. But it was too much of that. And then I started making far too many basics. And now I'm trying to figure out what the happy medium is, like what that ratio looks like for me. And how to infuse that into the basics as well. So that was like a big aha moment for me recently.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like what you pointed out about swing in one direction and then realizing that, well, maybe that's a little too much of that direction.
Overcorrecting.
And coming back to something that feels right for you. That's an interesting way to look at it. And you know, kind of similar to what I was saying with the volume thing. Like I got really into like big dresses. And now I'm kind of like, you know what? It's not really working for me anymore.
And you've gotten more specific about how you want to utilize that like design element.
Yeah. I do like volume up top, for example. Like I like voluminous tops if I can tuck them in and have some waist definition. But just like tons and tons of fabric around my body just feels like makes me feel smaller for some reason. All right. Well, let's get into our more specific tips around style changes. And maybe some of this conversation will be helpful for you guys if you feel like you're in a transition as well. I think we're always constantly in a transition personally. So the first one is to make a list of what's changed for you. And I think this is a really helpful starting point because change affects our clothing needs in ways that we might not immediately recognize. So think about those practical changes first. For example, did you move to a different climate, or did you start a new job, or did you have kids? I think these obvious shifts often require wardrobe adjustments, and we talked about some of the shifts that we've gone through personally and how those brought in new circumstances that we had to kind of account for in what we wear and in what we sew. But you might also consider subtler changes, like maybe you're more confident now and you want to try bolder colors, or perhaps you've developed some sensitivities to certain fabrics. These are all things that you can consider as changes that are affecting your life and changes that are affecting your decisions around sewing. You know, for example, I had a friend who moved from suburbia to a walkable city, and then she suddenly realized that she needed completely different shoes and clothing that worked for walking everywhere. So that's a really good example. And that's kind of similar to my own circumstances where I moved from a city to the country, which required a lot of different types of clothing, a lot more kind of workwear style clothing, things that are really sturdy, things that can get dirty. And, you know, like I was talking about with the pajamas, there are just certain things that as much as I love them, they have limited applicability in my life right now. So what's a change in your life that's affected how you dress? Haley, you mentioned having your second kid earlier.
I think that my children definitely have affected, for practical reasons, how I want to dress. And then also, I think with my first child, I felt like I needed to like momify myself. And I feel like oddly enough with my second child, with Frankie, I feel like I want to like return to a little bit more of the things that make me me, because it's really important to me that my children see that their mom has always made her individuality a priority, and that I don't like lose myself in anything, whether that's like motherhood or my career or whatever. So that's a big thing. I also think that working from home was like probably the biggest shift of the last 5 years for me, because that really changed how I dress on a day-to-day basis. and talk about like pendulum swinging. I feel like what like I think we all, when we first started working from home, it was like really sweatpants
Yeah.
focused. And now, it's for me has become about finding, not that I don't wear sweatpants here and there, but like finding that like happy medium of like feeling like I've put my work clothes on and I'm ready for my work day, but also like, no hard waistbands and
Yeah.
finding that balance. For me, luckily, that coincided with becoming a parent, so that like dress code is kind of across the board.
Yeah, I went through a period of wearing leggings all the time.
Uh-huh.
And then eventually I was like, oh my goodness, I need to put on some real clothes again.
Yeah, totally.
I don't feel like myself anymore.
Totally. I think that like there was like a moment for most of us anyway. What's one change in your life that you feel like really affected how you dressed?
I think the move to the country was the biggest one in recent years. Um, and I hadn't thought about working from home, but that's definitely true for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
I just went through a period of just like comfort, comfort, comfort. And it's hard for me now because I still work from home like probably 4 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of nice because I have 1 day a week where I can actually feel like people will see me. And I've really had to think about how much I care about the way I look when hardly anybody sees me throughout a day. Like
Mm-hmm.
my husband Ken sees me because we both work from home. But other than him, in a typical day, I might run into somebody on a dog walk, but that's really about it. But I still want to get dressed for myself and I don't know, feel like myself, I guess.
Right.
So that's something that I've grappled with over the last few years. And like you were saying, the pendulum swung one direction, and now I think it's kind of recentered itself.
Uh-huh.
And now I've kind of found a way to dress that feels good for me, where I feel like I look like myself, I feel ready for the day, but at the same time, I still prioritize comfort when I'm at home.
Yeah.
So it's been a journey these last 5 years.
Yeah, tell me about it. Let's get into this next tip, which is to make a list of all the things that have stayed the same. Sari had suggested of all the things that have changed, but it can also be helpful to do the opposite. And it's just as important to identify, what has stayed the same so you can kind of like hold on to what's working. So think about the garments that you consistently reach for, the colors that always make you feel really confident, the silhouettes that make you feel like yourself. Your personal history like really matters here. If you've always loved wearing dresses, then that's probably not going to change, even if the style of dress that you favor does change. I find that this exercise is like super grounding when I'm feeling uncertain about my direction. Sometimes we get so focused on what we want to change that we lose sight of our foundational preferences. I think this can help us to avoid, we keep on talking about the pendulum, but from going too far one direction and overcorrecting. And like really like maintaining our sense of self even when we do want to make some pivots.
Yeah. Or getting too influenced by other people, which I think is something that happens to a lot of us. And you see something that looks really good on somebody else, and sometimes you want to try it or try a trend or, incorporate new things, but it really helps to know what you prefer over the long term, I think. And I don't know, it's very grounding to me to think about too. Things that have stayed the same over 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, thinking in terms of like really long term, what's always been true.
Yeah. The next tip is to either create or update your core style mood board. So if you already have a Pinterest board or a folder of inspiration images that kind of represent what your style is, you can give it a fresh look and update it. And if you don't have one, it's a great time to start collecting images that represent how you want it to feel in your clothes. I know Haley and I both have these kind of core style mood boards that we update every now and again to kind of help us to visualize what is my style in this moment and what am I really, really drawn to. over a longer period of time. And you don't have to just look at clothing. You can look at lifestyle images, color palettes, even textures that appeal to you, all these things that you can incorporate into an overall style mood board. And I like to do this, I do it kind of every few months. I update it in terms of adding new things to it. And then every once in a while, maybe every year or two, I'll just kind of start all over and create a new one, bringing in things from the old one, adding new things. And it's always interesting and surprising to see what new themes emerge. And I think the key is to really save images that make you think, yes, this is me, rather than just, that's pretty. That's something pretty that I like. And I think that can be the distinction that really makes a difference for you when you're crafting something like this and trying to tell that story visually.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the core style mood board. It's my North Star every time I work on my sewing plans. Our next tip is to evaluate what you actually wear. This one can be so eye-opening. Sometimes we think about, we think we know our style, but our actual wearing habits can tell an entirely different story. One thing that I like to do when I'm feeling a little shift taking place or just intermittently is to take photos of what I'm wearing for a week or two. Not for social media. It doesn't have to be pretty and cute, just for your own reference. And then you can look back and look for the patterns. Are you always reaching for the same 3 handmade pieces? What do they have in common? Also notice what's hanging unworn in your closet. Sometimes a garment looks great on the hanger, but it doesn't feel right when you put it on. This happens to me all the time. And this exercise really helped me to realize that I was making a lot, far too many special occasion pieces, because I just love sewing a dress. Love it. But it wasn't proportionate to the amount of everyday pieces that I actually wore and needed in my wardrobe.
Yeah, it's that pendulum swinging again. Yeah, I did this last fall. I started taking daily outfit photos last fall just to keep on my phone. And I got out of the habit of it, but I did definitely notice some patterns that were surprising. I found that I wear a lot of pants. Even though I love dresses in the fall and the winter when it's cold, I will put on pants because it's cold.
Yeah.
And so that made me realize that I should probably sew pants more often because it's what I actually wear in that weather. It's been really interesting. And that's something I would recommend, even if it's, like Haley said, even if it's just for a week or two, and kind of get a sense of what you're actually wearing. And then our next tip is to start small with intentional planning. So instead of trying to overhaul your entire closet, focus on planning just one season thoughtfully. So choose maybe 3 to 5 pieces that would really improve your current wardrobe and fit with your lifestyle. And think about how these pieces will work with what you already own and love. This approach lets you test new directions without committing to a complete style revolution. So it's kind of like having a creative conversation with yourself about who you're becoming, one project at a time. And that is kind of what we do through the Design Your Wardrobe process. I'll tell you more about that in a second, but it's kind of our focus at Seamwork is this kind of small scale intentional planning rather than thinking in terms of huge changes and wardrobe overhauls. You're thinking about how to evolve over time. All right, so let's talk about our takeaways from this episode. My takeaway from our conversation today is that style evolution doesn't have to be this big scary thing or really overwhelming. It can actually be one of the most exciting parts of sewing, using your creativity to explore and express different aspects of yourself as you grow. And I think that connects to something we talk about a lot at Seamwork, which is sewing is all about these decisions that you make. Every choice you make, from the pattern you select to the fabric you choose, it's an opportunity to think creatively about who you are and how you want to show up in the world. And the beautiful thing is that none of these decisions are permanent. You can always make something different next time, and it can be just kind of this slow evolution. What about you, Haley? What's your big takeaway?
I think that my big takeaway is probably what I was talking about before, that like sometimes these shifts can feel like chapters in a book, like these kinds of like eras of yourself. But the more time and thought you dedicate to noticing patterns and noticing yourself, the more you'll realize that although there are those defined like aha moments, a lot of it is like there's lots of clues along the way. There's lots of like, it's a slow build over time. And I think that what's really like beautiful about spending time thinking about these things is that it gives us an opportunity to reflect on our own like evolution in like self and identity. And our clothing is just like really like this like vehicle for communicating all of that. It's like a really powerful reflective process. And I will never stop nerding out about it.
Yeah, same. And speaking of intentional planning, signups for the winter season of our Design Your Wardrobe program are now open. And this is exactly the kind of really thoughtful, strategic approach that we've been talking about today. So instead of randomly choosing patterns and hoping that they'll work together, Design Your Wardrobe helps you think intentionally about making clothing that fits your current life and personality. So if you join, you'll be with hundreds of other sewists as you follow along with our proven design process over 4 weeks and learn how to make it your own. So whether you're navigating a big life transition or you simply want to be more intentional about your handmade wardrobe, this program gives you the tools to plan a cohesive season of sewing that truly reflects who you are right now. And you can learn more and sign up at seamwork.com/go/DYW. So that's seamwork.com/go/DYW. And we'll put a link to in the show notes as well. And if you liked this episode, please leave us a review. We love reading your reviews on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or wherever you're listening right now. You can also follow us on YouTube at Seamwork Video. You can follow us on Instagram at Seamwork. And if you'd like to become part of the Seamwork community, head over to seamwork.com to learn how to join. And when you join, you can get that Design Your Wardrobe program for free. It's part of your membership. All right, and that's it for us this week. I'm Sari.
And I'm Haley.
And this is Seamwork Radio.